perfect transition is root canals.
Yeah.
So what, I guess my questions are, do you do them? What are the alternatives to root canals? Are there problems with root canals?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I would say, I was certainly trained to do root canals as a dental student, as a general practice resident at the Veterans Hospital here in Portland. I mean, I did tons of root canals. And for probably the first 15 years of my practice career, I was doing root canals and trying to do everything the best way that I could, integrating, lasers and ozone. But at the end of the day, I started recognizing, one, they fail. Go figure. You leave a dead organ inside of living bone, and at some point, the body's going to say enough. And
what does that mean? What does failure mean for a root canal? I've never had one, so I don't know.
Sure. Well, arguably, it's a funny idea. It's a funny phrase, actually, because there's inaccuracy in saying failure of a root canal. Like, a root canal can't fail. Only the tooth can fail. And it's more a biological consideration of how long will the body tolerate a dead and energetically inappropriate organ sitting in live bone. So arguably,
a root canal, and just for anybody, because I think there's people that don't really know what root canals are.
Oh, sure. Sure. Yeah.
And as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong,
sure,
it's the way to preserve a tooth. The tooth is basically dead, but you're preserving it in the mouth, so there isn't a hole there. Right. And what is the process in a root canal? Yeah.
So it's helpful to understand, when we talk and smile and all this and everything we see in our smiles, we're looking at enamel, which is it's a minuscule amount of the tooth. The majority of your tooth is actually dentin, which is still hard, but mostly collagen. And then inside every tooth, you actually have living tissue, like blood supply, little veins, little nerves, and that's like when people have feeling, oh, that's sensitive, right? You have soft tissue living inside of your tooth. Now, a lot of times, whether it's due to trauma, decay, dental work that you just had, which is unfortunately all too common, the nerve can get inflamed. And it's an interesting proposition when you consider if inflammation starts in an area where it cannot expand. Like, you smack your thumb with a hammer, it's going to swell, right? You bite your lip, it's going to swell. If you irritate a nerve and it tries to swell, but physiologically it can't because it's bound by hard walls, it will self-constrict and die. At that point, dentists are saying, well, you need a root canal, in quotes. And of course, people don't know any better. So they go in, they drill into the tooth, they remove whatever's there, whether it's infected or pus or whatever. And the idea is we're going to fill that canal space with material that's filled with metal oxides and all sorts of stuff. And, cross our fingers that things go well. Now, to your point, Chris, absolutely. The benefit of a root canal is you keep the tooth, which has aesthetic benefits, and you can keep chewing on it. Absolutely, those are benefits. The downsides are within 30 days, that tooth will become teeming with microbes, which slowly, leaks its way into the jawbone. Your immune system then has to clear it away constantly. So you now have the oxidative stress, or toxic stress, if you want to consider it that way, of that burden, along with it loses its energy flow. So teeth exist along energetic meridians, just as every other part of your body. So that then goes dormant. It's like putting a resistor into an electrical circuit. So pros and cons. Some people, like I think of my mother, for instance, who's a crazy vitally woman. She has so much vitality, a lot of energy. She had some root canals done like 50 years ago. And now in her late 70s, we're just starting to see her body saying, no, thank you. It's like and it looks like bone starts to melt away and an abscess forms. And the body's like, what do I do with this stuff, right? It can be painful. It can put you at an increased risk for heart attacks and other health issues. So whether it's a 2-year window that you get to keep the teeth, 20 years, I don't know. It can vary. But what I believe is important is to offer that kind of information, pros, cons, risk, benefits, and then help people look at the other side. Well, what if I take it out? And then what are my options? Do I have to replace it? To which the answer is no. You don't have to replace it. You could actually leave the space open. There will be consequences to it, but there also be benefits. You don't have to go through surgery again. You could do a bridge. You could do an implant. You could literally, and I've done this hundreds of times. Let's say it's a front tooth. You could take the tooth out. Sometimes you can even cut off the root of the tooth, fill it in with some composite and polish it and bond the top part into the adjacent teeth. It looks just like them, looks awesome, yet they don't have that infected root sitting in their jawbone anymore. So there's a lot to consider. Unfortunately, so many of the people who come to see us, they're at the last leg of this health journey because they've been suffering so long. They know they've done everything else. They've done the detoxes. Still, they're struggling. And oftentimes it boils down to root canal treated teeth, and not for everybody, but for a lot of people that we help, by the time, the day that we take those teeth out, they start noticing health shifts immediately. And it is fascinating stuff to watch. And at the very least, I would love for people to understand they have that option. They could remove dead teeth instead of having the root canal done.
And pun intended, root canals can be the root cause of chronic health problems.
Absolutely.
So for those of you watching, I wouldn't rule it out. I wouldn't assume if you have chronic fatigue, if you have inflammation, if you have autoimmune, if you have cancer, if you have any health problems at all, a chronic, like you said, it's almost like a festering infection in a root canal. It becomes a breeding ground for pathogenic microbes that leave your mouth, right? And they circulate into other parts of your body. That could be causing you health problems.
Yep.
I know some practitioners, holistic cancer practitioners, that insist that every cancer patient they work with gets their root canals taken out. Thanks for watching. If you like what you just saw, why not subscribe? Here's a link to do that. And if you'd like to watch the full interview, you can find it at chrisbeatcancer.com. There's a link to it in the description right below this video.